Hello everybody, today I'm going to go through how to do a 30-mark source question for A-level politics. These are found at the beginning of component 1 and component 2. So you start off in looking at your section A and you get to choose between 1 out of 2. The question will always start with using the source, evaluate the view that, and it will tell you that in response you must compare and contrast the different opinions in the source, examine and debate these views in a balanced way, analyse and evaluate only the information presented in the source. That bit is really important. You are looking for the arguments in the source. There should be arguments and counter arguments. You should try and find about 3, but you don't bring in any other arguments you know, even if there are other arguments you know on the topic that's there that aren't mentioned in the source. You can bring in other information, tell you evaluate those arguments, but you only use the arguments that you can find in the source. Right, so the first job for you is choosing a question. So I would look at both of them. Can you identify 3 arguments and 3 counter arguments quickly? If you can in one and not the other, then do the one that in which you can. Can you link the arguments to a counter argument and pair them up, because that's how you're going to write about them. You're going to say, well, on one hand it says this, and then you're going to evaluate the counter. So what's really important is being able to pair them up. And I would always take into the exam different coloured highlighters if you're allowed to be able to do that. Or if you're doing it as a practice at home or in school or college, then I would do the same with that. And so you're choosing the question. You can do this most easily on. I wouldn't necessarily eliminate one of the questions because it's on a topic you're slightly less confident on, because it might be that you're less confident on that topic, but there is the source is a lot more accessible than on one that's on a topic you know really well, but you don't understand the arguments that are in the source. And understanding the arguments in the source is the most important bit. When you've identified the 3 arguments on each side, then one of the things you need to do, as well as being able to link them, you need to decide which is the most effective down to the least effective argument on the side that you are going to argue. And it's really important that you decide on that, and that you decide on the position that you are going to argue through the essay. And that's something you're going to need to try and stick to, because you need to, if you're going to get more than 12 marks, you need to look at both sides of the argument. But you don't want to just sit on the fence. Sitting on fences is painful. You don't want to just sit on the fence and say, well, on one side it says this, on the other side it says that. You need to hit AO3, you need to have a judgment, and that needs to run through. You need to write a brief introduction. You need to define any key terms in the question, set out the debate very briefly, because you are going to do this in detail in the rest of the essay. So there's these arguments on this side, there's those arguments on that side. This side of the argument is more convincing because, and just give a brief judgment. And then you're going to start with the strongest argument on the side of the side of the debate you're going to come down on is going to start your next paragraph, and we'll look at the format of the other paragraphs in a second. So your introduction shouldn't be too long on this, but you do need to set out you understand the questions, you understand key terms, you understand what the debate is, so you show you've understood the source, and that you have a view, and that's going to help you across all the AOs. Right. So the system I recommend you use for these source questions is what I refer to as ideals paragraphs. Now, this is not my original idea. This is something that I've picked up off a politics Facebook group, and there's a guy in there called Sean Townsend. This is his idea, and he's designed it to meet the criteria of the exam board. And I know this is very widely used by lots of different politics teachers, and is known to be a really effective way of doing it. So ideals breaks down into, first of all, you identify an argument in the source, and you would start in your first paragraph with the strongest one on the side of the argument that you are going to be saying is the better side. You then describe it, you give more detail about what that argument is on about, and make sure that to bring in your own words and your own understanding to show that you're not just parroting what the source says. So you might, in the identify bit, you might say the source argues, and you might quote the source. In the describe bit, you're bringing in a bit of yourself, and you're saying, well, and what this means is, and that's going to show your understanding. It's going to help again with your mark. Then start bringing in some examples and bringing in some own knowledge. And this is where you get in factual details, things that you understand. It might be from something from an election, or something about a particular policy, or a particular party, or a particular pressure group, or whatever it is, or parliament, or a prime minister, whatever the topic is. You bring that in then and say, and this is demonstrated by the fact that this happened in 2017, 2019, 2020. This is Boris Johnson did this, Keir Starmer did that. This was the result of this election. So you're bringing in factual detail that will back up and show that that argument is really strong. Then go back to the question, answer it directly, and show how this argument is linked to the question, and that it is a strong argument, and talk about the logic behind it. Well, this shows that X is the case, which means that this must be the answer to the question. At that point, we're doing the complicated bit, and this is the bit that is really important if you're going to get a high mark and a high grade. You then need to link it to an opposing argument, a linked opposing argument that you found in the source, and explain how they link. So on one hand, it's arguing that first past the post is a really strong system because it was widely supported and gives majority governments, or whatever it is. However, it can also be argued that first past the post does not always achieve this, as shown by the result in 2015. Sorry, in 2010 and 2010 and 2017. That it doesn't always give a majority government, as it didn't when we had the coalition government 2010 to 2015, and when we had the Conservatives relying on the DUP from 2017 to 2019. So you explain how it links, so why it's important. Now, what's then really important is you don't just leave that hanging and go, oh well, there's this view on one side and then there's this view on the other. Ta-da! Now that will show that you've understood the source and that you are trying to adapt it in a balanced way. But the hardest marks to pick up are the AO3 marks. And what you need to do then is, after you've done the link, is you have to do the S bit. You have to scrutinize it. And this is the bit where you knock down the counter argument. So you might bring examples and things in, but you need to say, well, this counter argument is not as strong as the argument that I presented above, and this is why. So it seems old in a way to present an argument and then just to knock it down, but you've got to do that really to be able to carry your line of argument through, that you keep presenting that they're saying, well, look, I do understand there is a counter argument, but it's not very good because, and then you do your next argument on the positive side and go, look, there is a counter argument, but it's not very good. So essentially what you do is repeat, conclude. So you would ideally do 3 ideals paragraphs, and it might be that you can do more. I think in terms of timing you'd really struggle to do more than 3 well. You start with the strongest argument on your side of the argument and work down to the third strongest, or the weakest of the 3 that you've identified, and make sure you're telling the examiner as you go through that you have prioritized them, you have ordered them. Again, that's one of the other bits that'll help with your AO2 score, and explain why. And then when you've done your 3 ideals paragraphs, write a brief conclusion. Now, in this you are restating the arguments that you have gone through and why you've come down on that particular side of the argument. Make sure you are directly answering the question, but there really shouldn't be any surprises in here, because you should have been persuading the reader all the way through, and so you are not going to then immediately jump to a random news knockout punch that you haven't been talking about before. If you've got a knockout punch, make sure you're hammering that all the way through. Right. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this useful. There is already a video on my A-level politics playlist looking at doing the 30-mark essays, and I will add in good time one for the ideologies one. There's loads and loads of stuff on my political ideas playlist, and on my A-level politics ideas on political ideas on socialism, conservatism, liberalism, and nationalism. So there's loads of stuff on there, but I'll do another essay one on that because it is slightly different. Please, if you found this useful, please like, and if you want to find out more of my A-level politics stuff, then please subscribe to the channel, and that will keep you updated with everything that I upload. My ultimate aim is to cover the entire course. It will take me a while to get there. Please support me in doing so by subscribing. Thank you very much for watching.